From San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo, the Riverwalk, and the World Heritage San Antonio Missions, this is the Exit Planning Coach podcast with John F. Dini. Designed to help advisors who work with business owners, John talks with top professionals in the exit planning field about best practices, marketing tips, and how to be more effective when working with owners. Now, here's John F. Dini.
Hi there, and welcome to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. I'm John F. Dini, and glad to have you here. My guest today is Corwin Davidson, who graduated from Texas State University and became a financial advisor at 23 years old. After a couple of years of advisory work, he realized there was a niche in business planning that needed to be filled and completed the BEI certification program, the CExP, which I hold myself and is a very technical program. It's really great. He started with years of reviewing buy-sell agreements and helping owners fund the agreements.
Oh, yeah.
He now participates in a Wealth Strategies advisory group. Is that VFO Consulting, or it says and VFO Consulting?
And
VFO Consulting, two groups.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're tied to each other.
Okay. Obviously helping business owners design successful exits and provide resources for asset management, strategic tax planning, estate planning, and risk reduction strategies. So welcome, Corwin.
No, that'll do.
Great to have you on.
Great to see you, John.
So let's start out with the basics. What led to your decision to work with business owners? I mean, it says you recognized a niche. But I mean, there's lots of sub areas that you could have chosen. I just interviewed somebody recently who said construction. I recognized there was a niche in construction. So what about exit planning? What got you into that?
So what got me into exit planning was, starting financial advising career at 23 years old. Luckily, I got into a 6-month residency program with the first firm. So I didn't fail out in 2 weeks. But in the first couple of months, what I realized was that nobody hires a 23-year-old financial professional to do anything. And so the way I end up finding it kind of by accident is I started going on meetings with one of the partners of the firm, and he was working with business owners. And so what he said was, Corwin, you're going to learn about buy-sell agreements, learn how they get messed up, and learn how to fund them. And he was like, that's what you're going to talk about in our meetings. And so a couple of meetings in, what I realized was that business owners were listening to me at 23, 24 years old because I was telling them something that nobody else had ever talked to them about. And so that was the big aha moment of, wow, I'm 23 and somebody's listening to me talk about financial concepts. And so that was the big aha moment that led into kind of that 5-6 year period of time where that's what I was doing. That's how I was making my living, and ended up running into that BEI program.
That's pretty good. I'm gonna come back to you at some point because I've been planning to get a couple people together. One is, do you know David Jean? He also is a CExP. He's in Maine. He's a CPA in Maine, and he has the greatest buy-sell agreement horror stories you have ever heard. So I'm gonna bring you back to do that. So start preparing your
will do.
Don't ever do this stories.
Okay.
So we'll get you guys together. So how long have you been doing this? Now you're gonna have to give away your age.
Oh gosh. So we just crossed 11 years in practice. And exit planning, oh gosh, that's probably a solid 8 of those 11 years of actually doing, significant work in at least pieces of it. And then I've been a BEI member since 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
that was 8 years ago.
You have about as much experience as most people in the exit planning business.
Yeah.
Truthfully, that's the number of people with a certification, just generally speaking, because I was doing this for another thing I was working on, has tripled since COVID.
Yeah.
So
it's a hot area right now.
It is. It really is. So how do you start out? Okay, you're at one point your typical meeting with a client was second chair, as an area of expertise. But what a cool way to get going and get introduced to people. Well, how do you do it now?
So
What is
how I do it now, everything really starts at ExitMap. And so first meeting outside of, hey, we got connected or met through networking or met on a golf course, but if we're going to meet for a pointed conversation, that conversation is going to be a look under the hood. And so what we'll have them do is complete the exit map assessment and schedule a time to walk through. And as you've taught me, looking for anomalies, asking good questions, and really, the way we get these conversations teed up is the question of what's the exit, and then shut up.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just find out what they answer with,
Right.
and then we move forward through that assessment.
So at what point does the look under the hood convert to a closing an engagement?
So most of the time it's within 30 days.
Hmm.
We had one recently, actually last Friday. We signed a what is it, direct primary care physician's office or nurse's office. She's got three locations, and the first time I put the proposal together after we did the debrief with the assessment, I actually put dated that first proposal, and that was back at the end of February of this year. And she
Hmm.
ended up signing at the end of last week. And so that's the longest duration that I've had between, look under the hood to getting them to acknowledge they need to do it. And then, finally, 8 months later, she was like, "Hey, Cora, like we have to do this." Yeah.
I mean, it's unusual that most of yours turn around that quickly because I know personally as a practitioner, I have a lot that lag.
Okay.
And I don't worry about it because, once I've been introduced to him as the guy to talk to, sooner or later they're going to wake up and say, but usually it's an event.
Hmm.
A friend passes away or a family member or a partner says, I don't want to do this anymore. Usually there's some triggering event. Um, so that's interesting do you follow up specifically? Uh,
Absolutely.
hmm
And that's one of the things is my outreach is just asking questions. And especially if they've gone through a debrief with me in that assessment, I've got very particular questions that I can ask if they've fixed those problems yet or how they're handling that issue.
hmm
And so if you do that, do that enough times, and really the ones that we've signed this year, you're exactly right. They had something happen, whether it was, one guy ended up getting sepsis and lived through it. Another couple of business owners, one of the owners was just like, "I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore."
Oh, great.
And they
There's
fought
there's a
they fought
buy-sell
over
agreement.
evaluation. They fought over evaluation for 30
Oh,
days.
sure.
But yeah, it's just being, if you know there's an issue there, and they're not going to be able to most likely solve it on their own, then it's just continue asking questions.
Yeah, yeah, I had sepsis back in 15 and spent
Okay.
11 days in ICU.
Yeah.
It can be no joke, and it does wake you up.
Hmm.
I can assure you of that. So, besides having an event, what, share the magic words. What do you say to a client that they say, you're right, I need to go forward?
Yeah. So my big question is what's the exit, and shut up and just see what they say. And then we'll get into a little bit of conversation around, who you want to sell it to. When do you want to sell it? And they'll start getting a little bit more. If they start to back out at any point in that exit conversation, or that line of communication starts to slow down, the second line of questioning comes with taxes. Business owners, if it's not truly paid attention to, pay somewhere between 35 and 42% effective tax rate on K1 money. And
Hmm.
so I'll ask them, I'm like, "Hey, so how much did you like last year's tax bill?" And a lot of times they'll like that will spark this like immediate response of I had to pay this much in taxes last year from an
Hmm.
effective tax rate. If they give me any pushback on that, I like to bring a little humor to it and ask them, hey, I saw on the fridge at your office that you've got a picture of the commissioner of the IRS. So I know you love taxes, but tell me, how much did you love that tax bill last year?
Yeah. Yeah. I do something similar. I say, I don't want to assume anything. Uh, I have never had somebody answer this any differently, but you could always be the first. So I have to ask the question anyway.
Yeah.
How interested are you in paying the maximum amount of tax on your transition? And they like shake their heads and go, "What? What?" And I repeat the question word for word, and they're like,
Yeah.
"You're kidding, right?" Well, no. Some people, I've heard of people that like to pay taxes. I just wanted to see if you were one of them.
Oh, that's hilarious. I might take that from you.
Yeah, well, remember, the law of consulting ethics. You
Yeah.
know, the first three times you have to give attribution. After that, it's yours.
Okay, okay.
How do you market for new business?
For new business, everything is based on referrals right now. And then I do a good bit of just posting content from how prepared for this aspect of your transition are you? And that gets a lot of looks, but it doesn't generate a lot of inbound activity. And so we've got a network, and I've been doing this, running around playing Exit Planner for a very long time now. And so everybody knows that's what I do. I think one of the big things is being around long enough to where people are like, oh, hold on, like you've been in the same place, coming in here saying the same thing over and over for 2, 3, 4 years now. And they'll send a referral. And then it's just really important to make sure that when we start the engagement, go through the engagement, that um, they know they were thanked for it, and
Mhm.
that they can get to experience, not necessarily that I'm giving them the deliverable, but they get to experience from the referred person side of, oh my gosh, this is an amazing process. And then me telling them how much I enjoyed working with that person that they
Mhm.
referred in. And
Yeah.
so and that's picked up a lot of steam in ExitMap. But it also picks up a lot of steam in, talking about the different things, like, the story about buy sell, poking holes in buy sells. And
Hmm.
so we'll get some one-off stuff that, I'm a big believer in. If you can go get one piece, you can go get all the rest of the pieces. Just make sure you do a good job up front. And
Hmm.
so, when we talk about one of the biggest things I find in buy sell issues is, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, how does your buy sell agreement handle the problem of permanent disability of one of the owners? And they say, well, it doesn't. And I'll say, well, should we start there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and typically another answer I hear very frequently is, well, we have a death and disability clause, and we have insurance. Okay. Is that you have two insurance policies, one for death and one for disability? Well, no. It's okay. Your death policy doesn't cover disability. You realize that, right? Yeah. But so
Yeah,
many of
it's
those
a
clauses are in case of death and disability, and they think they've got it covered.
Yeah. Well, and that and inside of there in that same line is the definition of disability that's inside of the buy sells is usually terrible. And so like using the American Disability Association's definition really creates a lot of consistency and shorter timelines and more clear timelines around like, hey, we got to make sure that this disability doesn't disrupt the organization.
Okay, let me take a break so we can pay for the podcast. It's just going to be a minute. I think we're at 60 seconds, and then we'll be right back and continue this because it's a great conversation. Coming out of the buy sell thing is really a fascinating way to start.
How would your practice survive if only 25% of your clients were happy with your work? How many referrals would you get? Would you advertise that success rate? Over the last decade, both the Exit Planning Institute and PwC have surveyed owners and found that 75% were profoundly unhappy a year after their exits. In 10 years, the exit planning industry has done little to fix this issue. Business owners need purpose, direction, and activity after exiting. Planning for that starts with your very first coaching conversation. We work with advisors who believe that clients should be happy after exiting. ExitMap is a structured discovery process that helps you have deeper conversations about client options, objectives, and life after the business. We help you launch better transitions. Take a test drive at exitmap.com.
Welcome back to the Exit Planning Coach podcast. My guest today is Corwin Davidson, and we're talking about how he approaches exit planning and how he started out as a buy-sell agreement expert and grew that into broader services. Corwin, this is really a podcast, although we do put it up on YouTube and get a lot of views of it, but lots of people listen in the car or play it on their phones. So real quick, your phone number, website, how they get a hold of you?
No, absolutely. Yeah. So phone numbers 512-548-5656. That's how you can get a hold of me via phone. And then via email is Corwin, Corwin, at wsagus.com.
And what is WSAG US?
Wealth Strategies Advisory Group.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So before, during, or after a planning engagement, through the process, how would you describe your ideal client?
Ideal client is someone, ideally someone who's coachable, someone who can see the end and understands what we are talking about from an exit perspective. And I think those pieces are some of the most powerful pieces. I mean, and then you get into, our set of resources from ExitMap to the resources that we have with Wealth Strategies Advisory Group and VFO Consulting Group. Any business owner with $500,000 of profitability can really take advantage of all of the resources that we have to offer. But when it comes to industry, ideally, we're looking at service providers, medical practices, veterinary practices, engineering firms, accounting firms. We love home services businesses. Big reason for that is because right now there is a huge roll-ups situation going in the private equity space. They just love them. And so prepping a business to be sold with a high probability of being sold is a really nice way to have an engagement. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just reading the other day that they said the bloom is coming off the rose of dental roll-ups.
Yeah.
For the last 3 years, there's dental roll-ups everywhere, just constant. I have a client, multi-site dental offices who just got very high 8 figures for his practices. And he's not even a dentist, so that was pretty cool. What's your biggest challenge?
Biggest challenge is easily the lack of education that's existed over the last 2 to 3 decades in the exit planning space, especially for mid and small size businesses. There's nobody that's been out here doing the education work, talking to these small business about what's possible. And so when you meet with an owner and you ask them what's the exit, and they're like, what do you mean? And so then we start talking through it. And then, there's a lot of different areas of planning when we're talking about exit plan. It's a multidisciplinary sport. And so and that's another piece, was not only were the owners, their advisors didn't bring this information to them, but the referral partners, the CPAs, the tax planners, the attorneys, the advisors that the business owners really work with and have great relationships with, they're not educated. So they're not bringing these things up to these mid-market and small market businesses. But that's easily the biggest hurdle.
No, agreed. Although it is better, as we mentioned offline, I interviewed John Brown a while back from BEI, and you said you've interviewed him too.
Mhm.
And we were musing on the fact that I really got exposed through BEI in 2010, and back then, although it's not that long ago, but back then you really had to explain the term to almost everybody you talk to.
Mhm.
That's not the case anymore. They've heard of
Yeah.
it. They haven't done it. They don't know what it is, but they've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things I really like about you, John, is that you are very adamant about using the word exit. There's a lot of people in this space right now that they're scared of the word exit
Mm.
from an advisor's perspective. They want to call it something else, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Sure, using synonym, as you know, I write a lot. And, you know, I mean, you can only talk about you can only use the word business so many times. So you can use company, you can use organization, you can use enterprise, but you've got to have some things to mix it up. Same thing, I'll start out with exit. I don't mind talking about, succession or long-term planning or transition or transfer,
Yeah.
but I'm not abandoning the word exit. I've planted that flag as you had noticed.
Yeah. No, I like it.
What issues keep coming up with clients as you work with them? Where are the where are the hiccups that you get into a planning engagement and then it's like, oh, I didn't know we'd be doing that, or I don't want to do that.
Yeah, there's two big ones that we always run into. One, the first one that always comes up is valuation. John, I had somebody tell me a couple of weeks ago, their business is worth $7 million. Said, have you ever had it valued? Said, no. Said, where'd you get that value from? Said, my CPA says that one of her other clients with a business very similar to mine sold for $5 million. And she said, but my business is actually 20% larger than that business that sold for that number. And I was like solid rationale for how you're going to sell this business. So valuation is always a big one. And it's no surprise that the price is always inflated from the owner's
Sure.
perspective, but making sure that we can ground that. And that's one of the big shockers as well, as you think your business is worth seven, it's worth, $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the other big one is just the removal of the owner. Very few owners we meet can actually go take a 3-month vacation and the business continues to
Mm.
cash flow and continues to grow. And so talking to an owner about incrementally offloading onto a capable team all of their roles and responsibilities, that's a tough sell.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wrote it on the valuation side. I wrote a piece a couple of months ago about the owners don't intend to lie,
Mhm.
but that CPA's client that sold for $5 million, he probably neglected to mention that, a million of it was an earnout.
Yeah.
600,000 was a three year employment agreement, and 1.5 million went to pay off his credit line and his leases,
Yeah.
and the actual money he put in his pocket was like 1.6, you
Yeah.
know. Yeah, somehow they don't detail that when they're talking about the price they got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and most business owners aren't running around valuing their business all the time,
Sure.
discounted cash flow valuations and stuff.
Um, who is your best? You said you get your business through referrals. Who is your best referral source?
Honestly, my best referral source is clients.
Mm,
But that's been something as we've kind of hit this, critical mass of clients and having a group large enough to where they love what we do and I can reach out and I can ask.
mhm.
And then other than that, it's really the network. Whether it's real estate agents that are in the commercial space, or attorneys that are in the asset protection space. Those are two very valuable professionals to us, but for the most part, they understand what we're doing,
Yeah.
and they're talking to they're talking to the business owner all the time, and they're just working on a different side of it. And so once they hear the 5 workshops to design a master plan and get all of the advisors working in the same direction for the business owner all at the same time, that rings a bell. And then the story of how really business owners traditionally what they do is they start with the CPA. CPA fixes a problem today, creates a problem tomorrow, but they go do this siloed advisor work as needed. And what we find is that whenever these advisors are doing one-off work all by themselves, you put all these different pieces together. A lot of times they don't work well together. And so having everybody with the same knowledge, with the same understanding of what the business owner really wants,
Hmm.
all in the same document is just invaluable for them.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I say to every new client, and in all my proposals is we are the defenders of your objectives.
Yeah.
Because we see this, you see this constantly, the estate planning attorney that says, "Oh, it would be a lot better if you put the company in a salt trust first," and the CPA who says, don't accept an LOI that's an asset purchase, because it's bad for your taxes. Only sell your stock, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
this
non-big picture.
right, partial
Yeah.
advice or whatever. Okay, winding up.
Yeah.
Lots of people are getting into the space. We talked before we got online about how it's exploding and it's really become a hot topic. What would you tell a new advisor who is about to have their first meeting with a business owner to discuss exit planning?
Oh, that's a good question, John. And so what I would tell that person is find a piece of it that you can begin to understand and start there. I think the way I was introduced to this kind of type of planning work through working on a very specific piece of it that, we were able to do some good work for the business owner client. We were able to sell some insurance, make sure that kept the doors open, but pick a space that in the planning that you can continue to learn because taking it all on at the same time as a first meeting um, could very well be inefficient.
Just maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, but take it, after I got done, with years of, poking holes in buy-sell agreements, then we started getting into, executive compensation
Hmm.
and start talking to owners about, how you're going to get out of this, how you're going to fund the people and make sure that they're, aligned short-term performance goals, long-term exit goals. You can get them to help you sell this thing. Um, and then meeting you guys with ExitMap, that was really the kind of crown on top, was
Hmm.
having this structured discovery to be able to really turn over all the rocks along the way and in an essence have the business owner design their exit plan through you as opposed to you designing their exit plan for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate the plug, but also how passionate we are about that.
It's
And
it's one of the most important parts. That's why I think a lot of advisors kind of coming into it, especially in the financial advising, financial planning space, make sure you've got the right process.
yeah. Well, I just had at a recent conference, I just had one of our very successful subscribers come to me and say, I can't believe I screwed this up. He says, I've been using another product to do the assessment, and then as we moved through the plan, I used ExitMap for aspects of it.
Yeah.
Where I needed to find out this, I used an ExitMap tool or exercise to find that out. He said, then I finally decided to try ExitMap beginning to end before I use the other product. He says, I was an idiot. He says, I can't believe how easy it is when I'm done. And they say, when they're asking me, can you help me implement this?
Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate your time. Appreciate the plugs always, but more importantly, I think you gave some great tips about, having an area of focus, getting started, understanding who your ideal client is. And I really do intend to have you back when we put this panel together on buy sells. This is going to be a lot of fun because
Oh yeah, I
I,
can't wait.
we all love war stories. We all love
Yeah.
hearing, about disasters. It's like some sick thing that entrepreneurs have. I want to hear somebody else crashed and burned.
Right. That's how we
But
learn, right?
yeah,
Other people's mistakes.
but Corwin Davidson, thank you very much. Appreciate having you on, and look forward to seeing you around. You're only up the road.
Yeah, my pleasure, John.
Okay, have a good one.
You as well.